Good evening, midnight listeners. Tonight's story isn't mine. It was sent in by one of you, a listener who, back in her early 20s, moved into a house that had already held her family for generations. But here's the thing, you're not gonna hear this story through her words. I'm telling it the way her ex-husband remembers it, a man who spent years swearing she was only dreaming. Only, he wasn't so sure anymore, because one night, he heard it too, and the part that matters, he never admitted it then, not to her, not to anyone, not for years. This is the house on the road that wouldn't sleep. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. Where I grew up, every noise in the night had a name. Wind through the trees, pipes clanking, some critter under the house, a board creaking when the cold set in. You name the sound, and it stops being a monster. That's how I was raised. Plain. Simple. When we moved into her family's old farmhouse, a tired 2-story leaning into the bend of the road, I told myself it just looked haunted because it had been lived in too long. The porch sagged like it had bad knees. The windows fogged in the morning like the place was breathing. Even the banister was worn smooth from years of hands sliding down it. She told me it felt like coming home. I told her I could live with a draft if she could live with my snoring. We laughed. It felt normal, comfortable, and I swore to myself, that's all it was, just a house. That place wasn't just wood and nails to her, it was family. Her grandmother had raised kids in those rooms, filling the kitchen with hymns while the laundry flapped on the line out back. A great aunt had spent her last years in the back bedroom. Her perfume still clung to the wallpaper, no matter how many times someone scrubbed the walls. Generations had, well, they'd pressed themselves into the floorboards. You could feel it, like the house wasn't just standing there, but watching. She told me it was comforting, like being wrapped up in the past. I told myself it was just history, nothing more. But when the nights stretched long and the dark got thick, it felt different, like the people who had lived there hadn't really left. They'd just gone quiet. The first night it happened, she grabbed my arm so hard I thought she might cut off the blood. I squinted at the clock, 2:30 a.m., bright and steady, the only thing in the room I trusted. He said my name, she whispered. Who? I asked, still half asleep. The man. I sighed. You were dreaming. It was the only thing that made sense, but it didn't stop. From the very first night we moved in, 2:30 came like a curse. Every single night, without fail, she shook me awake, trembling, whispering that a man had called her name. Summer storms, winter ice, it didn't matter. The hour came, and so did the fear. Later, she told people, he didn't believe me at first. He kept telling me I was dreaming, and she was right. I did. I told her that night after night, clinging to it like a shield, until the night even I couldn't say it anymore. After a while, she tried to make sense of it in a way she could live with. One morning, after another night of clutching me awake, she said, maybe it's my mom's dad. He died before I was born. Maybe he's just checking on me. She wanted to believe it. You could hear it in her voice, like if she gave the fear a friendly name, it wouldn't hurt so much, and she stuck with it. Every time 2:30 came, and every time the voice followed, she'd whisper it. If I rolled away, I'd still hear her mutter under her breath, Grandpa. It's just Grandpa, like a prayer worn thin. I'd nod and say, could be. What else could I say? Inside, though, I was running through all the explanations I could think of. Fix it, explain it, label it. But the truth sitting in my gut was this. The dead don't keep appointments. Names aren't clocks. Still, I kept that to myself, because in the middle of the night, comfort matters more than logic. Denial turned into its own routine for me. Before bed, I'd walk the halls, rap on the walls, listen for loose pipes or a draft. All I ever found was dust and the faint smell of lemon oil from some long ago cleaning. I'd tell her it was nothing. Old houses sigh, I'd say. Beams shift with the weather. The wind in the cedars can sound like a voice if the night feels mean enough. At first, I said it gentle, but after years of it, years of her shaking me awake at 2:30, my patience thinned. Every night, it was the same. She'd grab my wrist, whispering that the man was calling her name. And every night, I'd shoot back, "You're dreaming. You have to be dreaming." I said it like a law, like if I believed it hard enough, the house would fall in line. She'd nod, like she was trying to believe me. But still, every night, she woke. Always 2:30, always the man, always no one there. This is the part where I probably sound crazy, but the house, it started to feel like it was listening, not with ears, more like, have you ever felt someone staring at you across a room and you just knew? That sharp little prickle between your shoulders? That's what it was like. The hallway felt like it was holding its breath. The corners seemed to be gathering something up. I told myself it was nothing. Imagination, suggestion, that's all. But I noticed I was walking faster through dark rooms, checking door frames twice like I expected them to be something other than wood. One night, she reached for me without even looking. Her hand found my wrist and clamped down, knuckles white. "Please," she whispered. Not really to me, not really to anyone, just to the room. I squeezed her hand and told her she was safe, that I was there. But even as I said it, my own breathing sounded too loud, and I wondered, just for a second, if I was lying. As the years dragged on, the nights got heavier, not like that old nightmare about a hand on your chest. No, more like the whole room had put on a coat. The air felt thick, hard to swallow. The window we usually cracked to let in the smell of rain or the faint gas from a truck out on the road, it started to feel sealed shut, even when it wasn't. Sounds felt shorter, cut off. Our whispers clung to our mouths like they didn't want to leave. At 2:30, she'd jolt awake but couldn't speak at first. It was like the first word had to claw its way out of her throat, and it left her shaking. Once, I tried to shake her out of it, and she flinched like even my touch hurt. After that, I just learned to lie still and slide my hand to where she could find it. The night that changed everything came after a day so hot it felt strangled. Then, close to midnight, a storm rolled in like it had been waiting all day to make an entrance. The roof rang, roads steamed, lightning stitched the sky together and then went quiet again. The air in our room tasted like metal and wet dust, like the world was being scrubbed clean for something. At 2:29, I woke up on my own, not from her shaking me, just woke. Like when you're watching a movie and you know the jump scare is about to hit. The clock's red numbers looked too sharp. Somewhere downstairs, a drain gurgled like it was remembering the creek it used to be. And then, at 2:30, she snapped awake, like someone had yanked her straight out of her sleep. Her whole body went stiff, stretched like a cable pulled too tight. She didn't scream, couldn't. Her eyes were wide open, but she was trapped in her own skin, like someone had locked the door from the outside. "You're dreaming," I blurted, because that was the script I always used, and fear hates a pause. Her gaze shifted, first to the wall beside me, then down to the foot of the bed, then to the doorway. "There are 3, she breathed, barely a whisper. I propped myself up on an elbow and forced my eyes to follow hers. Left wall, cracked paint, a line that looked like a dry riverbed. Foot of the bed, the blanket hanging loose, one sock we'd been missing all day. Doorway, just a darker rectangle of dark. "Where?" I asked, and my voice sounded more like a dare than a question. Her eyes flicked. Left wall, foot of bed, doorway. She didn't move her head, didn't even breathe hard, just let her eyes do the pointing. Careful, like any motion might invite whatever she was seeing to move too. "Don't look at them," I said, trying to make it sound practical, like logic could still win. "You'll only scare yourself worse," as if she was doing this to herself, as if fear could be argued down. I set my hand on her shoulder. Her skin was cold, but not normal cold. The kind of cold you feel when somebody's fever has burned the heat too far down to touch. "It's sleep paralysis," I whispered. "That's all this is. Your body's still asleep, but your head isn't. It'll pass. It always passes." Only I wasn't really saying it for her anymore. I was saying it for me. If I stacked enough words between us and the dark, maybe it would back off. So I threw explanations, definitions, reassurances, like bricks at a wall I couldn't see. But the house just hummed. Not loud, not even sound exactly, but there. The doorway felt like a mouth deciding whether to open. Her grip on my wrist tightened until my fingers went numb. It wasn't a question, wasn't even a plea. It was fear, solid and real, telling me without words, "Don't move." That's when I heard it. There are 100 ways to explain a noise at night, but this one didn't want any of them. It wasn't rain. The storm had already spent itself. It wasn't the fridge. The kitchen was too far away. Not a car on the road. The asphalt outside was holding that soft hush it only has after midnight, when even tires seem to tiptoe. It was a step, slow, heavy, deliberate. A floorboard gave under the weight, groaning in a voice I had never heard from that house before. The sound didn't just hit my ears, it went through me, right into the bone. You can forget a dream, you can excuse a creak, but you don't forget a sound like that. The air dropped colder, like someone had opened a freezer packed with years. My brain went rifling through excuses, wind, pipes, imagination, and came up empty. Something in me barked out loud before I could stop it. Wait a damn minute, no one is in the house. And saying it didn't make me feel better. It made the shape of the fear stand up and look back at me. "I'm gonna jump over you," I told her, because the bed was shoved against the wall and I was the one trapped closest to it. "I'll hit the light. Just hang on." She gave me the smallest nod, like a flame bending in the wind. Her eyes never left the dark of the doorway. Every part of me wanted to stay put, to let the dark keep what it had. My legs felt carved out of stone, my chest clamped like the whole house was trying to hold me down. But I'd said the words out loud, and once you promise something in a moment like that, it's not just a promise to them. It's a test of what kind of person you really are. Fear told me to stay in bed. Duty pushed me forward. A man is stitched together by the promises he makes when he's scared. I counted to 3 the way kids do when they run past graveyards, and 2.5 lasted a year. I swung my legs over her and hit the rug, then the bare boards, cool and alive under my feet, like the floor didn't like me stepping on it. I lunged for the switch, already bracing for the shame of it, of flooding the room with light and finding nothing, of making her even more afraid with my sudden movement. The switch snapped, the bulb sputtered, then flared, and just like that, the room was ordinary again. The doorway was only a doorway. The wall was just cracks, the end of the bed, empty, furniture, nothing more. Relief hit me, but it felt like an insult, and then the weight slid off the air, clean and sharp, like something had been holding it down and decided to let go. You'd think the worst part would be seeing something, right? A shape where there shouldn't be one. A man who isn't a man. That would have given me a story I could hold on to. We turned on the light, and there he was. Proof. Something with edges. But there wasn't. There was nothing. And nothing is worse, because nothing leaves you with your own doubt. I stood there, sweat running down my back, staring at a doorway that just a heartbeat ago had felt like a mouth. "See," I muttered, to her, to me, to the house. Nothing. My voice didn't even sound like mine. She cried without a sound, tears slipping into her hair. I should have switched the lamp off again, but I couldn't do it. The dark felt heavier than the light, even harsh as it was. So we left it on, both of us flat on our backs, staring at the ceiling until the sun finally came up. Morning has a way of making liars out of nights. Coffee smells like safety. Eggs in a pan sound like a crowd of friends. People tuck their worst parts away while the neighbors can see. I told her the same thing I always did, that she'd been dreaming, that the mind can make the body do strange things, that fear can trick you into hearing what isn't there. I said if you expect a sound at 2:30 long enough, your brain will break its own heart to deliver it. I said it soft, like a treatment plan, like love dressed up as logic. She nodded, but I knew she didn't agree. Not really. And me? I was too proud to admit that I'd heard something too. Pride's a cheap lock. Fear always carries the master key. We didn't pack up right away. Folks like to imagine stories like this end with suitcases at the door by sunrise. But that's not how it went. We stayed. We lived there for months after the night with the 3 figures. Nothing worse happened, not if you mean something you can point at in daylight. The house went back to its old routine of listening, and 2:30 kept showing up like clockwork. We just got smaller around it. We learned to hold hands without moving a muscle. We learned to breathe shallow so the air wouldn't notice. We learned to wait until morning gave us permission to pretend again. And sometimes, lying awake after she finally drifted off, I'd get the strangest thought. Maybe it wasn't the house at all. Maybe it was something older, something that had been let in once and never shown the way out. After that night, moving out stopped being an idea and started being a countdown. We couldn't see the clock, but it was there, ticking. We stayed a few more months, trying to pretend things might go back to the way they were before, but they didn't. The silence felt different now. 2:30 felt different. The house wasn't waiting anymore. It was watching us lose. Eventually, we packed. On a Tuesday, she boxed up the dishes. On Wednesday, I took the tools down from the pegboard and pretended some of them were too old to keep. On Thursday, we borrowed a truck. By Friday night, we were sleeping somewhere else. I told friends it was the commute. I told myself it was the plumbing. I told her it was time for something new. She just smiled and said, "We'll be happier." And she was right. Nothing followed us. In the little rental off the highway, nights made regular sounds again. Neighbors arguing once and then making up. Semis groaning past, the kind of wind that minds its own business. At 2:30, I'd still wake sometimes, check the doorway, and feel both foolish and grateful. She slept like the house had finally forgiven her. A couple of years after we left, they tore that old farmhouse down. Unsafe, the county said. Maybe it was, or maybe the place just got tired of holding its breath. One afternoon, we drove back to see it. Curiosity, I guess. The lot was bare, just a rectangle of pale dirt where the foundation had been. It looked wrong, like a scar without a wound, or a mouth that had forgotten how to close. We didn't get out of the car, didn't need to. We just sat there, both staring through the windshield. And the same thought pinned us both down. The house was gone, but whatever lived inside it hadn't gone anywhere. It was in us now. The air inside the car got heavy, the way it had in that bedroom at 2:30. She shifted in her seat, and I caught the reflection of the empty lot in her eyes. My hands tightened on the wheel, like gripping it harder might hold something back. Neither of us said a word. Didn't have to. The silence already knew what we were thinking. We stayed together for 12 more years after leaving that house. 12 years of birthdays, bills, little arguments, long drives, laughter over nothing. Life kept rolling the way life does. Ordinary enough that some days I almost convinced myself the house had been a dream, but it never left us. Not really. That night was like a third presence in our marriage. Quiet most of the time, but always there. It showed up in small ways. In the way she sometimes froze at 2:30 without even realizing it. In the way I found myself checking doorways in places we'd never lived before. We didn't talk about it, didn't have to, but it never stopped being between us. With time, the memory dulled. Life has a way of sanding down sharp edges. Work, family, routines. All that noise made it easier to drown out old echoes. I stopped waking up at 2:30. She stopped whispering in her sleep. The house became something we didn't name, like a scar you forget about until it aches. But scars don't really vanish. They just fade until something brushes against them, and then you remember every detail all at once. Even on the days I wasn't thinking about that night, it was there, hiding, a bruise just under the skin of our marriage. Sometimes I still drive that stretch of road. The house is gone, but it doesn't feel gone. The asphalt hiccups where the driveway used to start, and for just a second, my hands tighten on the wheel like muscle memory knows more than my head wants to. In spring, the lilacs still push up wild, stubborn things. Their smell drags me straight back to that bedroom, to that hour, 2:30. I tell myself it's just dirt now, just weeds, but I can't shake the sense that the ground remembers. That if you stand there too long, the silence leans closer, the way it used to in that house. So if you ever end up driving there after dark, don't linger. And if you catch the clock at 2:30, don't say anyone's name, not out loud. It's strange, the things that outlast love, not the dinners or the inside jokes or the little kindnesses, though I remember those too. What sticks is a shadow. The first time she grabbed my wrist like it was the only thing keeping her here. The way the air thickened like someone invisible had put their hand on the room. That floorboard in the doorway, speaking one slow syllable we pretended not to understand. That house left a bruise on both of us. We don't talk now. We don't have to. Bruises don't fade just because you compare them. They only darken when you poke at them, so we let it be. Life went on, but some nights, when sleep is thin and the hour feels wrong, the memory creeps back, like a bad dream you've had before and know you'll have again. I roll toward the lamp, thumb hovering over the switch, but I don't turn it on. I stare at the doorway. I whisper her name in my head just to hear something human. And still, I can't shake the thought. Whatever called her, night after night, it wasn't just the house. It was something that had been let in once and never closed. Tonight's story came from one of you, a midnight listener who trusted us with something that still lingers, a home full of roots, and a night that never let go. I told it from her ex-husband's side because sometimes the only thing two people keep after love is the haunting they share. But when she told me her story, she added a detail he never knew. Back when she was a kid, she and her cousin used to play with a Ouija board in that same house. They never closed it, and she believes whatever stepped into her life back then never really left. So maybe the house on the road wasn't just listening. Maybe it was answering. If this story stuck with you, like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next tale that slips in when the clocks get strange. Sleep light, midnight listeners, and keep listening.